Self-motivation in remote work is the fourth component of the remote work mastery scale. And the relative importance of self-motivation really depends on how involved your line manager, team leader, supervisor is in your day-to-day work. And sometimes when people work remotely, their managers can still be heavily involved in supervising and directing, in focusing on performance management, and regularly directing your performance and goals and objectives. So not everyone necessarily needs the same level of self-motivation. I've talked about that in other videos, how, some types of work you might have huge projects spanning weeks or months that you have to do almost completely independently, and some teams are going to be a lot more collaborative. So part of being successful in remote work is finding the right team and finding the right balance of how much supervision and how much encouragement you need to get your work done. Because some people find more direction from other people is actually really helpful, and there's nothing wrong with that. And some people work most effectively with limited input. Now, even people who work really independently still need to be communicating and collaborating and making sure that what they're doing aligns with what the organization, what their team wants to get done. But figuring out that balance is something that takes a bit more time in remote work, and figuring out how to work best with your team. So we can look at three elements of self-motivation, and the first is initiative. So initiative is about getting started, and that's from getting started in the morning, getting back to work after a break, and how much it takes you psychologically, mentally to get started on tasks, whether it's the beginning of the week, whether it's the beginning of a day, or just getting back to work in the afternoon. So initiative gets more important the more independent your remote work is. And it's something you really have to understand in yourself and communicate to your team. So the better you are at motivating yourself and getting that initiative, something you build up over time, but it's also something you can talk about amongst your team. So do you need more regular check-ins to encourage you to make sure you're making progress every day or every week or whatever is necessary? But understanding, measuring your own initiative is something that you need to know about and work on building in a remote work environment. Now, goal setting is generally a collaborative process too, and a good manager is going to have a good performance management framework, and they'll probably be able to help you set your goals and make sure that your goals are aligning really clearly with what needs to get done. Now, if you don't have that, you're going to need to figure out how to do it for yourself. So a lot of that is going to be setting tasks based on reasonable chunks of time that you can focus on and accomplish something in. So you need to understand how long you can motivate yourself for, how long that self-motivation lasts to get something done. Can you set a task at the beginning of the week, or 2 or 3 tasks, and say, I'm going to get these done by Friday? Some people can do that. I'm going to say, I'm going to write this report, I'm going to write this article, I'm going to do this piece of research, I'm going to analyze this data, I'm going to get this content done. Whatever it is, they can say, here's my objective for the end of the week, and here's what it's going to look like once it's done. Now, the more expertise you have in your role, often the better sense you have of how long it takes to get something done. If you don't have a clear idea of that, you're going to need to break it down into smaller tasks. And then it's going to come to prioritization as well as motivation. But figure out what's the optimal amount of time you can concentrate for, you can work for, and you can motivate yourself for, and break your tasks into those units of time and those clear, measurable objectives. Now, the final element is perseverance. Now, perseverance is what happens in the face of challenge. So how supportive, how friendly, how well you get along with your team is going to be a huge, huge, huge contributor to your personal resilience and perseverance, right? Do you have people both in your personal life or in your team who you can go to for support? When stuff is getting tough, who can you ask? Who can you talk to about it? If the answer is no one, that's going to be more of a challenge. So the better and the more resilient your network, the positive communication you have, both in your workplace and outside of your workplace, who can you go to for help and advice, is going to strengthen your perseverance. So if something goes wrong, do you have someone you can ask? If you're overly stressed, if you're feeling overwhelmed, do you have someone who you can talk to about it? If you feel your skills for a particular task aren't quite up to it, can you tell someone about that? And who can you ask for help? If the answer is no one, that's going to be limiting. Some people can persevere in the face of a lot of difficulty, but most people need some support at some time. So how do you keep up your productivity, your performance over a long period of time? And you have to build up strategies to do that. And sometimes in a remote working environment, that means really working on those other communication skills that we talked about earlier to make sure that you've got a strong network of people that you can rely on, and that you know how to approach people if you have problems. And if you have problems that you're not sure how to fix on your own, you've got a strategy, you've got an approach that helps you overcome those problems, deal with the stress, and work effectively and be successful in a remote environment in the long term.